Hola, you are listening to FirstGen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna. I am your host, and I am so excited to bring to you guys today's guest. So I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hola, I am Violeta. I am a first generation Mexican immigrant. I am the founder of MoneyChisme, a podcast, blog, YouTube. It's basically a platform. The goal is to teach financial literacy, personal finance, and especially real estate investing. That's my passion. Been here in the U.S. for 33 years now. I came over here when I was 3. I was born in Monterrey, Mexico. And yeah, it's been a long journey.
You came here when you were 3. Do
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
memory of Mexico at all?
It's so vague, and it's funny that you asked because recently I went home to visit my parents for Mother's Day. And my dad had like a big old bag of like pictures,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, and I'm there, and I was like, I don't remember this at all. And some things I vaguely remember. I do remember a few times that I went to like Monterrey or to Matamoros, but I probably would say I have maybe 4 or 5 actual memories, and everything's just like, oh, I was there. Like I don't remember this.
Mm-hmm. And when you guys came to the US, was it like your whole family or how did that transition happen?
Yes, so my dad decided to like move the family to Texas because he had una tia there, and he heard like there was better opportunities over here. We ended up getting a visitor visa, my mom and dad, and it's just me and my sister. And she
Okay.
was a baby like when she came over because she's about 3 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we did it. We came over here on a visitor visa, and the way we would do it is like, we'd live over here, and every summer we'd go back to renew the visitor visa. And then one of the times we got
Oh.
caught, and so then that was like that transition of from when we kept coming over here, with a visa, and then we just like ended up having to cross back over because my mom, my sister, and me were the ones that would go to Mexico to renew the visa, but my dad would stay in the U.S. because he was working. He was the main breadwinner,
Mm.
and so when they caught us, we had to stay, and then he brought us back over, and so then that was like transition to becoming undocumented, and I think I was like
Mm.
9-ish. I mean, it's very vague. Like I still remember the part, and then like crossing over,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, how interesting.
Mhm.
Because for one, like your story, I obviously don't know your story, so I'm learning with the audience. And so I'm like, okay, she came when she was 3, so likely it wasn't necessarily a huge transition in terms of language because you started from school from very young here. But then to know that at the age of 9, you then experience having to cross over. And do you remember that experience?
Yeah, I still, that's one of the few memories that like are imprinted in my head. Like whenever we got caught, and then my mom was like, oh,
Mm,
because, I'm the one that spoke English. And she's like, go over there, talk to the
wow.
immigration officers. And I
Yeah.
still remember like that scariness. And then
Yeah.
you feel like guilty because like it didn't work, obviously, because they're like, nope, you can't cross. And so, and my mom's stressed and everything. And
Yeah.
so, trying to be at a young age an advocate for my family when we got caught, it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so then eventually I kind of vaguely remember like my parents talking and figuring out to get a coyote
Yeah.
to like bring us back over. And it's crazy to remember that because you hear like the stories, and like we got a little bit lucky that they weren't like, obviously they didn't take us like through the desert or something and leave us there.
Okay.
um
Uh-huh.
but I do remember how we crossed it, and because it was the summer, we crossed the river because we're in Texas, and because it's the summer the water is lower. But I
Mm.
remember having to be carried by one of the señores, and then some other señor carried my sister, and we put like some clothes in like a trash bag, And then I remember we were like hiding or something, and they were watching the puente for the officers,
Mm-hmm.
the immigration officers. And then I remember like it was like go go go, and then we had like to be carried across the river. And then I don't know who it was, but una señora, I don't know, she had like a house nearby, and that's where we kind of like hung out for a little bit
Mm.
until they decided to like move us, and we went to some store, which is where we met my dad. It was like a fiesta or something, like some
Wow.
random grocery store. And
Yeah.
then I do remember that too, because we were all stressed out, and I remember going like down like the aisles, and then I saw my dad. I was like, "Oh my God, Dad!" You know.
Mm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
still remember that. It's still imprinted, and and I don't really remember the drive back home that much, but my dad told me the story of how they were like so stressed out, and because
Yeah.
there's the border patrol like roaming around and stopping people, but like we got lucky that we made it all the way back to Dallas without like any stops or anything.
Yeah.
But it was a long it was a
Wow.
long drive.
My dad just recently told me the story of his sister crossing. He crossed a couple times, but also like his sister. And it's interesting you say like a casita and like someone has a house right by the river because it's like the same
Yes.
story. He's like hay alguien que tenía una casita, and so he had to wait there until his sisters were going to be crossed across the river, and then he wanted to help to make sure that nothing happened to his sisters. He came out and then yeah, he told me about the casita, but he didn't necessarily tell me that then there's like migra like watching out after.
Yeah, it's crazy because I just recently learned about like the whole full story. I think earlier like this year, and and it's funny because I remember que estaba otra muchacha with us, like another girl with us, and then I was
Mm.
like, who was that? And he's like, oh yeah, because they had I guess somebody else from like their neighborhood was querían pasar like one of their daughters or something. I don't remember what it was, but
Mm-hmm.
he's like, yeah, he remembers that they didn't want to like the coyotes were gonna try to keep her because they wanted more money. Like after the
Oh.
cruzaron, they're like, well, now and they tried to do it to us too, but my dad gave them the money, and but the other people couldn't, and my dad was like, you're not gonna keep her, like, we'll get you the money, I'm good for it. I just gave you more money. I was like, but she's not gonna stay here by herself and everything like that. So
Wow.
so we brought her with us, and I was like, oh, so that's who that girl was.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and he was telling me that there's like checkpoints across the interstate or whatever, and
Mm.
there was one that he had to pass through, but because he picked us up like cause like in the middle of the night, it wasn't manned, it was closed, so we just passed through it,
Oh.
and he was like, you know
Is that a memory? Because I'm just wondering. I mean, I don't necessarily share, I was born here, so I don't share the experience of crossing the border. But I'm wondering what was imprinted in me from a very young age is the story of my parents, right? And the fact that they had to come here. And it was the root or the source of a lot of like my passion or drive for whatever I would do. It was kind of like it really drove the fact that I felt such a deep responsibility to make my parents proud and make it all worth it. I'm wondering for you, having that memory, was that like an imprint that affected how you lived your childhood?
I think it did, just reflecting back on just life, is that even from when they didn't let us pass, and from that time, and probably earlier, it's just like I probably just don't remember, because since you're the one that speaks English, you're the one like making phone calls and stuff. But I think
Yeah.
that was kind of like a little bit of the turning point of realizing that I'm responsible for my family, because I had
Mm,
to like advocate, for my mom and my sister and me to let us like go through,
yeah.
and then several times along, my life, it just being put in that position all the time. And it stayed with me. I still have that responsibility to this day of the well being of my mom and dad and my sister.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I'll ask you in a second what you resonate with most, healing or awakening. But I think that if there's not a conscious I think, separation of that responsibility, you likely can keep it for the rest of your life. It's kind of like the role that we take within the family. And if we don't recognize that we can transform that role, that it doesn't have to stay the same, then we might be embodying that responsibility for a very long time. So maybe that's a perfect like lead into, the healing and awakening journey. Which one of those two resonates with you most?
I would say right now it's a little bit of both of an awakening of, coming to terms and realizing that's why the reason that I'm the way I am.
Yeah.
And then starting to like go through, I'm starting to like ask my parents more questions. Like I found some stuff from my mom. I was like, "Oh my God." And so just like getting like how you were saying like getting to know their story, so it's awakening also like realizing why, they act a certain way, why, my mom like might have anxiety of certain things, and just like understanding them more and
Yeah.
myself as well, and understanding why I have this weight on me to make sure that my family's as well. And
Yeah.
then but it also takes me down like the healing path of trying to get a little bit of separation and realize that, it's okay if, you pull back a little bit, and then ensuring that I go and look for like maybe therapy for everything that I've gone through, because it wasn't probably till like last year when I started, hearing more of, I think it was because of TikTok and all that, and I started seeing more people that have gone through the same as me, because
Mm.
for the most part you're going through life and you're just like surviving and you're in that zone.
Yeah.
And now that like I see more like other people that were going through it, it starts kind of that healing process, and realizing like the trauma that you've been living with and just kind of ignoring. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm at that point too of trying to come to terms with that and find a way to heal that, so that way it
Mm-hmm.
stops affecting me.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think one thing that I hear often is like we describe it as weight, like it's this weight that you carry. And it's so interesting because I think a lot of the times it's very invisible, like even to our own selves, which is so interesting, right? Like we don't even recognize that it's a weight that you've been carrying. It's more so, like you said, you kind of just go through life and you're in survival mode. So it creates kind of this tunnel vision of this is life, this is how it is, this is what's required of me, and this is how I need to be. I think you said TikTok, you think is kind of like what got you into this. And what
Yeah.
has that process looked like for you over this last year when you've, started to dip your toe into reconciling basically like your past, your present, and how you currently are?
With TikTok, it kind of opened, I guess, the community or the world to me, because I was so, and I think it was also like the whole COVID stuff. It kind of like brought everything
Mm,
to a standstill a little bit, to the point where you can actually stop and look around your
mm,
surroundings.
yeah.
Because this whole time I have just been like on, focused on a goal, like making sure I go to school, making sure I get a good career, making sure I'm making money, making sure I'm making good financial decisions, and that in the future will pay off, to ensure that not only, that I'm good, but I'm able to make sure that my family's good,
Mm,
because I'm feel like I'm responsible for like, because they're not gonna have like a retirement and stuff.
yeah.
So I was kind of like stuck in that grind mode that whole time. And so when like COVID and TikTok came around, I started seeing more people like me, and just hearing their stories, and just, seeing how they're processing, and just building that community, and like talking to other first gens that been through the same journey has, um I guess, helped me in analyzing my own myself, and realizing
Mm-hmm.
that how I was hurting myself because I was, putting all that pressure. But even my dad had to kind of like tell me to chill out too and to just like start enjoying life too, because he started seeing that as well, that I was just getting stuck on grind mode. And he now has to tell me all the time, like, remember to enjoy life, we'll be okay. And it's like that's
Mm,
starting to help me as well. And um seeing the TikToks about like, yeah, we have that responsibility, but we also gotta start, putting ourselves first a little bit sometimes. So
yeah. How interesting that also your dad has come into this knowing, because I think a lot of the like maybe the struggle sometimes is like you coming into it and not being able to or know how to communicate that to your parents or siblings. And I imagine there's probably a ton of different ways that people come into like involving their family into their healing, right? Because if you're changing and you're transforming, then it's likely that those around you will notice it, or that those around you will notice the change and not necessarily it be well received sometimes. But I'm wondering, like, it sounds like you're getting more information from your parents. So is it something that has been easy to maybe communicate with your family, or how has that been for you?
so I'll be honest, I'm still kind of resisting a lot just because um I'm worried of like all the emotional aspect of it. And I think it's because of everything that I've gone to. I'm very like reserved and I keep stuff in all the
Yeah,
time, and I'm not very like I guess an emotional person. So I just like bottle stuff up.
yeah,
So I've been like slowly talking to my dad and having these conversations, but I don't think I was ready yet to just have a full on like a open conversation of everything that we've been through.
yeah.
So I've been taking my time just because I'm a little bit worried of everything that might come out.
Mm,
With my mom too, I've had a few conversations, but I've had to navigate that one a little bit different because she may feel a little bit of attacked.
mm-hmm,
And so I've had to like, even when I was bringing up just a regular conversation about the trauma of like crossing over and growing up undocumented,
mm-hmm.
um that can feel like an attack to her, like, oh well, it's our fault or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not your fault. Or uh she might dismiss it a little bit, and I'm like, no, it's not that it's your fault or anything like that. That's just a fact of like growing up undocumented is, you're living in fear the whole time. Like that's
Yeah,
gonna have trauma. And so I've had a little bit of conversations with her, but I don't think she's there yet. But she's been getting better at, or maybe my tact has been getting better at making sure that when I'm trying to open these conversations, that they don't feel like I am attacking her or blaming her or
mm-hmm.
something like that.
I honestly think that that's one of the things that makes this journey for first gen so difficult, because you're not only managing like your own emotions, what's coming up for you, what you're remembering, but in addition to that, a lot of us have parents that maybe too are emotionally unavailable for that as well, for that type of healing, right? And so, like you said, it's kind of like you then have to manage your own tact, like your tactics or way of approaching things and how you're processing. So it's kind of like you're holding both. And I think that's what makes it like really difficult. But super cool that, you've already recognized that for yourself.
Yeah, because I've definitely had a few conversations, and my sister as well. And even with her, I tell her because, and it's funny that she'll be like, I don't remember that. I was like, because I was the one that was dealing with it.
Mm,
Like, I was, the one. They weren't asking you, hey, you call this company, or hey, figure out why this or that or whatever, because it was
yeah,
me. So you
yeah,
were never the one that they put that pressure on. You were just like whatever.
yeah.
So that way, so yes, you still have some of the trauma, especially since we both grew up, and documented in that fear of, getting like deported and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you didn't go through, and which is why she probably doesn't feel that weight of my parents, and it kind of like frustrates me sometimes. I was like, I need you to like get also on top of this because I can't do this by myself. And so through those three people is like navigating my dad with his stuff, and because he has his own trauma and I'm learning about his stuff, and then my mom too, making sure that she doesn't feel attacked so that way she can be receptive to what I'm telling her. And then with my sister too, like having to tell her like, yeah, we there was some stuff going on, you just didn't notice because I was the one that was doing everything, and so that way you didn't have to.
Yeah.
So it's like three different avenues that I have to navigate.
Wow. Oh my God, Violeta, I feel like you just gave my heart and soul a little hug. Because I mean, I love doing the podcast and like content because one, I just didn't want people to feel alone. But one thing that it's done for me is not made me feel alone too. I too have just one sister, so it's my dad, my mom, my sister, and I. And my sister is also 3 years younger than me. So there's just a 3 years difference. And that is like what you said, I resonate with everything because I think something that happens with parents sometimes is they just also don't like keep tabs on, oh yeah, it's just one child that I'm relying on. They just get used to it. Like, oh, pues ya sabe mi password. Oh, pues ella ya sabe. So then they just start relying on you for everything. So growing up, similarly, like, if they had to make a call for internet, I would set it up. If they had a new phone, I would set it up. It was kind of like every single thing. And obviously, my sister doesn't even like know what that weight feels like. Like she kind of, at some point it could be like, why don't you just forgive them, or why like it's not that bad. And it's like, sure, but you don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. Till this day, I still translate things for my parents. I still am their go-to for things. Like the other day, I was on the phone, like a three-way call with my dad because he wants to cancel this account that he has. It's been weeks long process. So this is week 3 that we're talking to different people. And so he calls me, he mutes himself, and then he just says yes when they say, do you authorize your daughter to speak on your behalf? And then he mutes himself again. And this is something new this week. I just told him, hey, Dad, I have no problem helping you, but I would love if you take ownership of what we're doing here. So I told him, can you get the account number ready for when they ask for it, like you say it? He's like, esas cosas no las tengo yo. And I was like, exactly, because I'm keeping tabs and notes
Yep.
of everything.
Oh,
And
facts.
so, yeah, and so he took like, 10 minutes looking for the account number, and I had it right in front of me. I was ready. But I was like, let him, because instead of like holding resentment for once more being the go-to and not getting the help, I was like, what if I just invite him to be a part of this? Y así, because in the back of my head I was like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to call today, oh, and then we're going to be on the phone for forever. And I was already feeling resentment towards him. And I was like, let me not do that. Let me just be like, hey, Dad, can you be a part of this? Because you mute yourself and then you just let me take on the whole conversation. And so he looked for the account number, he found it, and then when we talked to the rep, like he was the one doing the talking this time. We found a Spanish rep and I muted myself and I was there for backup. And it felt so good, and I was like, wow, sometimes we don't know that we can do that. Sometimes we think that we
Yeah.
have to hold it all.
Yeah, that's true. I think we got so focused on being the one, and nowadays it's like you do have like the Spanish speakers, and people that can help them in Spanish, and that we don't have to carry that weight anymore. And so my dad's also been like my mom still like, I still have to do everything. She's just like immediate call, like this or that or whatever. But my
Yeah.
dad has definitely been doing everything. Like I don't really worry about it. Like he's been taking action to make sure he figures out the social security stuff. he figured out that like in Mexico he worked a few years there, so he gets something from over there too, apparently. And I was like, oh, okay. And so he's been starting to take action on that, but I still get like the calls, and it's like, and it's frustrating because like it, you know how you were talking about your sister and my sister as well. She's right there. I'm in California. My parents are in Texas and my sister's in Texas. So, but yet I still
Mm,
get the phone call way over here. And I'm like, I have like a billion things that I'm doing.
yeah.
And my sister, you know, is there to help, but I still have to be the one. And it's like, um, it's a weird way to try to like get talk to my sister, because I also don't want her to get
Yeah.
mad, but I don't want to also continue building like a small resentment. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you like feel that as well, like a little bit of resentment with your little sister, like come on, like why can't you also help, you know? And so like it frustrates me, and I've told her like you're the one that's right there. You can't like just, it's something simple. You could even look it up online. Like just do it, but I
Hmm.
still have to be the one for the most part. And she's done a few things, but it's still all three of them just like just fall back on me all the time. And
Yeah.
so like I think I'm trying to figure out to see like just pull back a little bit to force my sister, but I don't know if she'll like pick up the slack or not.
Yeah. Well, it must be so interesting because at this age, it's going to be a hard muscle for her to develop. Well, for her and your parents, right? If they're so used to it, it's kind of like a routine. Well, it's like they don't even question it. And my sister listens to this, so sister, cover your ears or pause.
Right?
uh,
Because we're
but
about to.
yeah. But to answer your question, I think I poured or I directed a lot of the resentment towards my parents, not necessarily my sister, but as I'm getting older, I too have started to think about my parents and like them getting older and how we're going to take care of them and all of this stuff. Not too long ago, Thanksgiving of last year, my sister and I were speaking, and I was telling her that like I was thinking about my parents and that stuff, and she's like, "Oh, I've never even thought about that." And I was like, "Exactly. You don't even have to think about this."
Right? Like, I've been planning about their retirement since I was like in high school. I was like, oh my God, so I got to make sure this, and that. That way
Wow.
I'm successful. And, then it's funny because some of the things that like I planned for, like in high school, of like having them like live with me and making them like a little casita where I buy some land and stuff like that. And that's slowly coming to fruition next year. So like the ball is rolling this
Wow.
year, because I'm looking for the land, but I'm taking my time because I want to make sure I get the land that I want.
Yeah.
And then next year the ball rolling with like building my house, but a little casita for them, so that way they're right there with me and I could take care of them and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Ooh.
but my sister, yeah, probably didn't cross her mind that whole time, and I've been planning it since high school.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna plug that you and I are going to be doing a part two where we're gonna be talking more about real estate and money and all of that good stuff. So stay tuned for that, guys. But I do want to maybe talk about what you're talking about right now because I have a feeling that so many, including myself, can resonate with planning for that and also maybe it not happening as fast as you think it's gonna happen. Can we talk about that? Because that's real. I feel like those emotions are so real. Like, I remember, being in high school thinking by the time I'm 25, I'll have my first house. So easy, right? Like, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I had the same thought too.
I'm going to get good grades. I'm going to become, I'll do whatever it takes to become a millionaire and boom, like everything's going to happen great. I'll be able to like retire my parents. And now I'm 30. I don't have my house. I haven't retired my parents. Like my dad's still working a very labor intensive job. He's getting injured once in a while now because he's older. My mom still works two jobs. And so it's kind of like, oh crap. Like the time is like passing. And for me, I'm just feeling the oh, basically, you know?
Yeah, definitely. As they get older, it's like you feel like you're running out of time. And, I planned for for this stuff, and I thought I was gonna get it like a little bit earlier, right?
Yeah.
So I started planning since high school on what the steps I needed to take to become successful, so that way I could take care of my parents. But what we fail to take into account is the market, right? Or like, inflation and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and even the prices like of like college and the loans, and those are things that we don't know about. So that throws like a wrench in our plan of like our finances, or just our plan in general of
Yeah.
becoming successful. And so then that starts becoming frustrating, especially when you see like our white counterparts, or
Mm.
um that like you see them now that they're like, oh, I got a house at age 20. You're like, what? Like, I don't think I bought my house. What How old I was? I think I was like 26, and
Mm.
it was only because of the VA loan, right? Because like a
Oh,
military, so we have a special program where you can get a house without a down payment. So
okay.
that was an opportunity presented to me that a lot of us don't have. And so it's going to take you like longer to build up, the down payment or the credit score or whatever, on top of not knowing how to do any of that, you know
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so you in in the meantime, you're seeing your parents, struggling and still working. Like my mom also still just works, and I'm like, do you, like, and they're older now. When you were younger, you were like, okay, yeah, you don't like that they're working
Mm-hmm.
so hard, and but you see them young, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I have time. But now it's like same thing. My mom thinks she's what, like 55 or something like that. 58. And my dad's like 63, and
Mm.
they're both still working, and especially my mom, she works like nights. And I'm like stressing out because I'm worried that she's going to like hurt herself. I'm worried about my dad or whatever. And so now I feel like this, like, oh my god, I'm running out of time, I gotta hurry up. You gotta kind of like control that, because it might lead you to taking some financial risks that you are not ready for, and then it could make it even worse because it's gonna set you
Mm.
back if it causes something that like to fail, or you know
Mm-hmm. How have you, like you said, you have to control that. Has there been like any thought, like perspective or something that has allowed you to set that down for a little bit, that pressure? Or how do you navigate it? Because yeah, I think like as time passes by, maybe guilt, pressure, fear, all of those things kind of ramp up a little bit more. So how do you navigate it, I guess?
a little bit that helps is that I'm not like right there. But
Mm,
every time I go visit, like I just went this past for Mother's Day, and then I was like, "Ah, man, I need to hurry up." Uh,
mm,
but because I know that if I, jump the gun per se, like I could mess up the plan that I have. So I have to really, because I have a set plan of how I want to do these things. Um, it's keeping me a little bit in check to not act on emotion so much. Like earlier this year, I was feeling that anxiety of like, man, I need to make a move right now. The goal for me is buy a rental property, one per year, and the goal was in the fall time. But earlier in the spring, I was feeling that pressure of like, okay, I need to buy one now.
mm,
But if I let that feeling keep going, I may end up buying any property that is not actually a good investment. And
yeah.
then it's going to set me back. So just like learning to sit down, and I do have like a mentor, and I like messaged him, and I was like, hey, are you finding anything with like, what do you think of the market right now? And he's like, yeah, right now is probably not a good time. I don't see anything, blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, I thought about this. um because I was gonna take a strategy that is very risky.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he talked me down from that emotional because I was feeling that pressure of like, okay, I need to do something,
Yeah.
but I'm not ready for that strategy yet. And so
Mm-hmm.
luckily, that's why it's always good to have like a mentor on whatever it is that you're trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
or because then you could like go to them and they could check that emotion for you because they don't have, he doesn't know my family. He doesn't, I mean, he knows me a little bit, but there's no emotional on his side. So he's the logic.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, like having a sounding board for what you're
Yes.
feeling and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Oof, I think that's so important because I think a lot of the things that as first gens, especially eldest or eldest acting, that we hold it in our minds. Like it never really leaves our mind. It's something that we the weight that we carry it every single day, but we don't always vocalize it. We don't think anyone would understand or care. We probably learn to deal with a lot of stuff on our own. Since we're the ones figuring out things for our family, and maybe you can tell me if you resonate, but usually I don't rely on my family for things. Like I don't ask them, how do I set up this thing in my computer? Like I will Google it and figure it out. I don't ask them about much things, to be honest. Like I like to hang out with them, spend time with them, have fun with them, but when it comes to like troubleshooting, I kind of got myself. I kind of learned to do that for myself, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because it took me a little bit to start really kind of like getting a mentor because growing up you are that person that has the answers, that is the go-to. So for me, the whole time, and it's a little bit of pride too. It ends up being
Mm,
like a pride thing because I remember going through like my career and not necessarily asking for help as much because I was like, no, I could do it. Yo lo puedo hacer by myself. Like I could look this up. I don't need nobody's help or whatever, but it made things so much harder than it needed to be just because I was, terca. I wanted to be, the one that I did it by myself or whatever. And it wasn't until like I started getting mentors that, things started becoming easier. Like, I started skipping steps because I had somebody that had already
mm,
gone through that. And so, yeah, that's one thing that sometimes we have to learn, especially when we got used to being the go-to, that it's sometimes hard to let go and be able to find a mentor and ask for that help or accept that help and have
yeah.
someone guide you because we want to say that nobody helped me. I did this all on my own. I didn't have to rely on anybody, because we like the idea of like self-made and all that stuff, but we're already behind in a lot of things that we just mentorship really accelerates that journey.
I love that. Yeah. Dropping the story, right? The story of it has to be me or by myself. I know probably those that are listening, everyone has a different, like they're in different stages of it all. One thing that really helped me is vocalizing to them that feeling that I had, because for the longest I was just stressed about it and felt it, but I never talked to them about it, you know? And so something that helped was being like, I had this conversation with my dad. It was more emotional than I wish it was. Like I was like, "Oh, I hate that I'm so emotional about this." But I told him like, I feel sad that I haven't been able to help you financially and that that I can't tell you to stop working. And I just want you to know that. Like, I want you to know that this is on my mind all the time and it sucks. Like, I hate it, but I'm sorry. Like, I'm not there. And it's hard. It's hard to say those words, right? Because it's just like this. I don't know. For me, it was really emotionally charged, but it was so helpful for me because he was like, Mija, like, don't be thinking about that yet. I'm healthy. I'm fine. Like, I'm not there yet. And he's like, a mí me gusta trabajar. And so he just gave me his perspective. It didn't take that thought away completely, but it was no longer something that I allowed to like weigh so heavy down on me anymore. And it wasn't like so charged. I kind of like I took away its power by letting it out. So that's a tip that I would recommend for those of you listening, if it's possible for you guys to like vocalize it, let it out, and see what happens, and see what you receive back. Because sometimes we also make it something so different than it actually is once it's out.
Yeah, that's true. Because sometimes they don't realize, how much stress you have still. Because when you're younger, they probably know like, okay, a little bit of stress with your kid, and you have to like translate or whatever. But now that you're older, they don't realize that they're, and like you said, it became a habit, and they don't think about that we are thinking about their retirement. They're just like living
Mm-hmm.
their life and everything, and so the same. Not it. I didn't have like an in-depth conversation with my dad, but just the things that I'm telling him, and like, oh, I'm doing this because I want to get land and this and that, so y'all could live with me and this and that, whatever. And he had to like stop me, and it still tells me like, I'm making the plans, I'm making sure this and that, so like don't worry about us, I'm figuring it out. So that way, so like that in itself, and especially now that I know that um with the Mexico thing, they're gonna have
Mm-hmm.
like healthcare over there. They're gonna, I think he gets like retirement. I don't know too much. So that
Mm-hmm.
has, relieved some of the pressure for me, because he's doing some of the legwork to ensure
Yeah.
that him and my mom are going to be okay afterwards. So and then we sat down over, oh no, I think it was a phone conversation, and he told me his whole plan of like, of how he's gonna be, making money, and if they're gonna live with me, they're gonna rent out this house, and just laid down. And when I heard that, that made me feel like so much better, because he has taken the time to come up with a plan, and it's doable. And like I was like, okay, it released some of the pressure, because of like, okay, I don't have to stress out that much, because they are going to be okay. So, and that just happened this year that I found out of his plan. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? Like this whole time I was like, he's like, oh, he's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. So I was like, I've been like stressing out this whole time, and you've been making moves. And
Yeah.
it's like, he didn't realize that maybe he should tell me, because I'm over here making a whole plan and stressing
Yeah.
out. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, I think we see them living their lives. They probably see us living our life, and they don't think that we think, and we don't think that they think.
Yeah, exactly. I'm over here
Yeah.
seeing them, and like, okay, I got to do this. And then he was seeing me. He's like, okay, I got to make sure I do this, so I'm not a burden to my daughter and everything. And we just didn't
Yeah.
communicate, so we're both just stressed out.
Yeah. So, yeah, communication. I mean, we hear that all the time, right? Communication is key, but a lot of the times I think in our family, we're also leaders sometimes in like the communication aspect, like we have to open certain doors that have been closed for so long. And so we're the ones opening the communication windows. And so cool that like one, I love your plan of like, your home and building them a home, and how beautiful that some of that pressure has been taken off, so that you don't feel like it's this urgent thing, that you have to do now. Because even if his plan doesn't completely fill everything that you want for them, at least it's a piece of it, right? And so you're not taking care of all of it. It's like you can focus on your plan, he focuses on his, and somewhere in the middle, it's going to work out.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, I am excited to start talking to you about real estate, but before we do, I have some resource questions. You've told us, that it's kind of been this year where you've been focusing on maybe your healing, maybe that like looking in the way of, oh, what happened, what my story, like looking at that and
Hmm.
processing, right? So, if others are in that stage of their journey, maybe you can share with us what is one tool that has really been helpful during this time.
For me right now, I did sign up finally for therapy, but um because of COVID, they were still backed up, and I couldn't get
Mm.
like a therapist that I wanted. So this year I'm trying again, but have to do the whole initial stage of like where they analyze you to
Mm.
figure out where, to send you.
Yeah.
So, but that's not till next month because they're still a little bit like we don't have enough therapists. So,
Wow.
yeah, in the military we don't have enough
Mm,
um initial ones. I think I probably did 4 sessions last year, and just doing that helped me a lot because one of the things they pointed out to me is like I disassociate a lot, and so
mm,
um ensuring that you go to therapy for sure. I know, I mean, I was like that, and I'm still a little bit hesitant because like it's nerve-wracking to like go to therapy and have all that brought back up when you
yeah.
buried it so deep.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
no, like, I buried it deep. So, but I realized that it's something that needs to be addressed because it's obviously still affecting me in certain aspects of my life, and the way I am, things that might trigger me. So it's important to address that. Another tool is just like I've started reading more books on either like self-help or just more of our culture books.
Okay.
Even if it's just like what's it called, like just made up stories, just being able to relate to the characters.
Mm,
um I'll also like watching like social media like YouTube. I've made a big effort to search people that have similar experiences as me,
mm-hmm.
on TikTok, Instagram, on YouTube. And then so that's been very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely in the podcast, which is how I found you, because I was like, oh, the self-healing, that's perfect.
Yeah.
and and hearing those stories on your podcast or similar podcasts on a variety of subjects, it just helps me feel like my experience is a legit experience, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not the only one that maybe we all don't have the exact same, but it's similar, and we have the same some similarities, so you're
Yeah.
not feeling alone, and that's very comforting. And
Yeah.
then even that in itself is what told me like you need to go get therapy. So like seeing the
Mm-hmm.
TikToks and seeing like the podcasts, it's like you need to go get therapy, go find. And then even with that told me like, okay, you can't just have like any therapist. You need to find one that is experienced in or familiar with the first gen experience, especially
Yeah.
undocumented, because
Yeah.
if you go to whatever therapist, they're not gonna understand and help you correctly.
Yeah. Favorite song, let's see if you have one to listen to that like is a pick me up or just puts you in a good mood.
His name like Peso Pluma or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I've been into his just because him and Yaritza, I think is her name, Yaritza. But they're bringing like the corridos back, and that's been very comforting. So it really, like when I like even when I work out here, because I like to sit out here and just be in the back. I'll put that music on it, and it's comforting because that's
Mm-hmm.
like music that I grew up with, but then went through that whole like assimilation process, and it kind of like pushed that away. And so
Yeah.
then now that it's coming back, like I'm enjoying it. It's like, yes, finally, like I
Yeah.
could, it's back.
Yeah.
As which it came at a perfect time as I'm, healing that part of the assimilation process that kind of got away with your culture and identity and stuff.
Yeah.
So now that it's here, I like to play it a lot to try to like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, rekindle with my identity from before.
What is your favorite quote or advice that you maybe refer back to?
There's one that we used to say it a lot, but I heard it like on a TikTok, like again. But let me see how it went. It's a variation of like where they say bloom where you're planted, and that was told to me throughout my career, like because we get sent to different places, so you want to bloom where you are, but like on TikTok, I heard that one, and it was basically like, yeah, bloom where you're planted, but if it's like you know, how did he say it? Basically, like if the soil isn't good or whatever, then uproot yourself and put you,
Mm.
plant yourself where you are going to be able to flourish,
Yeah.
type deal. And that was a different mentality than what I've been, you know, dealing with the whole time of like, okay, wherever I go, I'm gonna stay there and do, the best I can or whatever, right? You're blooming where you're planted, but you don't have to do that. Like you can also make a change for yourself and be able to flourish even bigger.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that quote when I heard it.
Ooh, I love that. And don't be scared of doing that because we can get a lot of fear around replanting, right? Or something new, basically. What is or who is an influencer that you follow that leaves you positively inspired?
Dr. Martinez or something, but he's basically like talks about language and how language is evolving and all that stuff.
Mm.
But the reason I liked him because he's always talking about how who cares if you're speaking Spanglish or whatever, because that was one thing that was always kind of like um looked down upon. Is like
Mm.
or if you, especially me, that my Spanish, like I feel like it's good, but obviously it's not like the perfect Spanish that in Mexico and stuff. It's like the Spanish that I learned over here is all informal and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so you are self-conscious about that. And so when I see him, he's always spreading that positivity that, like, who cares? It's language, you're communicating, and, don't feel bad. When I see him pop up, I always watch his videos.
And then lastly, a feel good or powerful book or movie.
The book is like $1 million something decisions or something, but it really goes through changing your mindset of making decisions as she calls it like broke decisions versus $1 million decisions.
Mm.
But um it's basically just the mindset of buying back your time and all that stuff. So it's really because you feel bad that you know you don't have the ability like to get a housekeeper or whatever, or you feel guilty, like especially as we're taught, like, okay, you got to be the career woman and you have to be able to take care of the home and the kids too. And but
Mm-hmm.
so that one is about, it's a financial book, but it's geared towards women, especially women of color, and Black women,
Mm.
and making those decisions and getting over that mentality that, what, like, buy back your time, pay a housekeeper, get a nanny once in a while, or a cook or whatever, because you're worth that time to be able to like relax, or build on your business if that's what you want to do, or just be able to like enjoy your kids or vacation or whatever.
Ooh, okay. You're gonna have to tell us what the name is, and I'll put it like in the
Okay.
description because it sounds like a really good book. Even for me, I'm like, ooh, I want to read that. So we're
Okay.
gonna wrap this part up. Thank you so much for sharing. I know, especially like if you're in your journey, it's like all new and it's probably a little bit vulnerable. So thank you for being open, to share what you're currently navigating and how that looks like for you. And before we wrap it up, is there any last thing that you'd like to say to those that are listening?
That you're not alone, that seek out our community. We're out there. We are starting to build a community on like throughout social media, so that way you don't feel so alone. And um definitely don't be like in that mindset of not reaching out for help, um whether that's like therapy or finding a mentor or whatever it may be. And it's a
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah. I would love for people to know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you could find me on MoneyChisme.com. That's the site where you can read the blog. I post blogs there. Or you could find me on YouTube, on Instagram, and on TikTok. It's MoneyChisme. I think on IG is money underscore chisme. And so, but I pop up So yeah, you could reach out to me. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Yay. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so, so much for listening. Make sure you check out part two. I know it's going to be juicy. So, if you found this episode helpful, please make sure that you share it with your amigas, amigos, amigues. And remember, First Gen, I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. Bye.
Bye.